San Juan County, there are regulations that do not allow the rental of new guest houses, and there are rental restrictions on existing guest houses. Do you see this as a source of year-round affordable housing? Should that be changed? And the next person on my list for answering, starting off with that question, is Michael. Guest houses and rentals.
Well, I don't think the blanket opening up of guest houses to the rental market would solve the problem. Most guest houses are in the residential neighborhoods and were permitted for family use when their guests arrive. Any change of use would have to meet health and safety regulations for rental properties, and a conditional use permit would be required to change that use in a residential neighborhood. And for many properties, there's not too large an income difference in a long-term rental versus a vacation rental, especially for the permitted rentals who pay a lodging tax as the bed and breakfast and the inns do. And many of us have seen how vacation rentals have changed the neighborhood. Some of us have seen this coming for years and nothing's been done about it. I think there should be a time limit on transient rental permits with a chance to reevaluate every few years. And the answer is addressing the potential problems in each neighborhood, making sure that a rental will not adversely affect the neighbors, making sure the rental will meet health and safety standards, and of course enforcing the regulations fairly and consistency for all the properties, all the people involved.
Okay. Bill?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so the guest house accessory dwelling unit question is one that's currently being examined in the community, on both sides. There's several incentives that could be put in place relative to property tax break or faster permit times or lower permit fees, as well as relieving some of the restrictions on the location of the guest house relative to the primary resident. You still have the fundamental issue of the equation doesn't work. So if someone's going to build a guest house on their property, they've still got to figure out how they're going to actually make it pay for itself, if it's going to pay for itself. So the real question is the Growth Management Hearing Board. They made a ruling several years ago about accessory dwelling units and rural densities, and in fact they even had a quote in there saying thinking that an ADU was going to be affordable rental housing was ridiculous. So clearly before we go down that path, we better do some homework to make sure we're not wasting our time such that the Growth Management Board would throw it out. But if we go and actually increase or have a quantity that's available for affordable housing, then again we need to restrict that to long-term rentals and affordable rents. And also we got to make sure that the county has a way to enforce that restriction and has an enforcement plan in place to make sure that those restrictions are being followed. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So, and Rick, just a clarification of the question. I took your question to mean that you were talking about actual long-term rentals, because as you said, can you use it for long-term rentals? So state law allows anyone who stays over 31 days in any kind of facility, you don't have to collect lodging tax, and it's not considered transient lodging. So if you have we live on 20 acres and have 2 parcels, and there's a house and a guest house, and we rent our guest house that's on another parcel for affordable rate for one of our employees. So I just want to clarify, if you have a guest house, you can rent it. It just can't rent for under 30 days without having a transient lodging permit. So again, I'm not sure what which question you're saying, but on the affordable, I think to solve the affordable rental housing problem, you have to look at it like cogs in a wheel, and there's a bunch of different cogs, and each one solves a different problem, and you need to address those. I think ADUs should be something that we address. I think you should take a look at, why can't we have a house 300 feet away? Why does it have to be 100 feet away? And technically, if you build a guest house, you can live in the guest house and rent out your main house. So it's sort of, it's restrictive, but it's not. You're just depending on if you're willing to do that, you can make more money for the house. But we definitely need to take back when we open up our Growth Management Act or our comprehensive plan and take a look at it. I want to look at more density around the 5 hamlets and Orcas. What we have historically, these have been areas where communities have come together. We sort of went away with that when the Growth Management Act came in. Why aren't there more clustered housing in Olga or Doe Bay or West Sound or Deer Harbor? Let's take a look at our communities differently so we can go back into a more community spirit in different parts, and not all of it focused in Deer Harbor or East Sound.
The ADU question, I don't know how many people were in this room that were around in 2000 when the ADU issue came up again, the bloodletting that took place at that time. So we went from guest houses to ADUs at that time. But that struggle is gonna have to open up again if we're gonna look at, do long-term rental housing. We're gonna have to look at how we're using our ADUs or guest houses. I'll call them guest houses because that's basically what they are. We gotta look at the regulations on the location from the main house. What are we doing with the other, all the building units that were taken out of the market by either being purchased by the land bank, conservation easements that are taken off these building units? Why can't we take some of those building units and cluster them in areas? Redistribute the building units with restrictions on it that will be for affordable long-term housing. We need to look at what is affordable too. We could spend the rest of the night talking about what is affordable, because affordable is different to everybody. But something that a person can rent at a reasonable rate for a long time. Okay.
So I think the real key on the affordable housing is we gotta start doing something, right? We've talked about it for about 16 years now. First staff report was 2000. We had a second whole analysis in 2008. Here we are in 2016. Let's do something. It may not be totally right, and it's actually multiple facets. I think we need to start multiple things. We need to work with our nonprofits that are currently providing a part of the solution. I think we have a large number of units. I mean, Opal does a great job, 30-unit project, excellent, but 30 units isn't enough. We know that. So how do we augment that? How do we increase their capacity maybe to do multiple projects at once? Those are examples of questions we need to answer, and we need to do it now.
I'd like to say something again about the transient rentals. That's been the big problem with making it hard to find an affordable rental. And I think with the vacation rentals, every week in the paper you see 2 or 3 more vacation rental permits, and there's been no work with the county to address them, to really regulate them. They just keep getting permits. And I think that's one of the biggest problems we've had now is the last few years of just more and more vacation, transient rentals, which has cut into the affordable rental market. I think we need to we've talked about it, but we haven't done anything about how to regulate the transient and the vacation rentals.
Okay. So I don't agree with Mr. Durland on this subject. I think that new transient lodging applications could be one portion of the affordable housing thing, but land prices have gone up. There's so many other environmental factors that have played into this that's not an accurate thing. We're working currently with, first of all, we worked with Airbnb, and they're now paying tax on all Airbnb products in the state of Washington, including in San Juan County. The Visitors Bureau and the chambers that receive money from customers who are doing long-term rental or short-term rentals, they're required to provide their transient lodging permit number and their UBI number so that we can make sure that they're paying their tax to the state. We're working on a transient lodging ordinance that should be finished by the end of this year that will put 5-year limits on how long the permit lasts. It will have garbage requirements, it will have fire, life, health, safety requirements, and it will provide an ability for the county to collect the UBI numbers so that if we find someone who's not being compliant, that we can address that and send it to the state. So these are a lot of crazy issues, but there's solutions that are coming, and I think we just, there's so many things in local government we have to work with, and unfortunately sometimes it takes time.
Kathleen, one follow-up question. Please make the
I just wanted
question.
to ask, in that legislation that you're creating, are you saying if there's a 5-year, somebody gets a transient rental permit, which is what, $2,500 right now? Are you saying every 5 years they're gonna have to pay $2,500?
No, it'll be a nominal fee. The main reason for that,
Nominal meaning like what?
$20 or
Okay.
$40. I mean,
Yeah.
the problem is that the county doesn't have the right to collect the tax, the lodging tax that's collected on it. So this whole discussion about the transient lodging actually started because there wasn't parity in the lodging industry. So, the Outlook Inn is charging 10% more than someone who's not a registered transient lodging, and that wasn't, and it's morphed into more of an issue with the affordable housing. So the reason we'd have that 5-year is that because it does transfer with title, we'd have an ability to collect the UBI number so that if we felt, we built a GIS layering that has all of the permit numbers on parcels, so you can look at a VRBO listing and look at this and find out, you know, if they're not compliant. And we have a new code enforcement officer who's actually starting to work on, he's probably done 4 or 5, 4 or 5 different, you know, looking into it. So we're trying to figure out a way that's not, I don't think it's fair to take away people's rights to put a guest house on the property to make a living, or to make, if they want to do that, or a short-term rental. But they need to be fair, and they need to have it be safe, and it needs to be the same as everyone else's, so there's parity. So, no, we're not trying to gouge people for money, it's just something enough to, you know, collect it and file it and have it, so.
Anybody else have a comment?